Hey, this is Sandy.
And Randy.
And we're here on AT Corner.
Being an athletic trainer comes with ups and downs, and we're here to showcase it all.
Join us as we share our world in sports medicine.
Welcome back to another episode of AT Corner. For this interview episode, we are spending time around the snack bar.
Around the snack bar with Emily Barnhart, registered dietitian.
Yes, we are going to be talking about how ATs and dietitians collaborate.
This one's really cool. I love food.
We all love food for sure.
Our athletes love food. Our patients love food. We love food.
I mean, let's be honest. How many times have we had intense discussions with our athletes comparing foods?
Well, I think the best part about this, and kind of what Emily talks about too, her focus is not what needs to be cut out, but instead what should be added to not only injuries for healing, but in rehab, in concussions, in just general life specific for athletes. There's so many resources in this episode, and even how to find a dietitian to work with.
Yes,
when
absolutely.
Things become out of our scope. And also, I love that she talks about how we as athletic trainers, there is some stuff in our scope that we can talk about.
No, absolutely. And we can definitely play a supportive role for, the dietitian that's treating your patient or athlete or, employed by the university or consulting with the university.
Perfect. So actually, you want to introduce who is this Emily that we're talking about?
Yes. So we interviewed Emily Barnhart. She's a registered dietitian and also a certified strength and conditioning specialist. She grew up in gymnastics and was a cheerleader at UConn in her undergrad. She received her master's in exercise science from Ohio State University, and I'm going to assume the listeners out there will want me to say the Ohio State University. She has worked with the University of Virginia Athletics and the Texas Rangers. She started the Injury RD in January 2022 to provide more resources for rehab athletes and professionals, and she is starting to work with USA Volleyball in the next week.
Actually, Injury RD, and we'll talk about this at the end and in the episode, she has a lot of great free resources as well, so make sure you check out the show notes or stick to the end when we talk about what resources are available to you. For now, why don't we just get started with our cryo breakers?
Yes. So we had to spice up icebreakers. So we call them cryo breakers. What made you become a dietitian?
Yeah, first off, I love that you guys call them cryo breakers. That is so nerdy athletic training of you. I love it. But as far as becoming a dietitian, I actually started in strength and conditioning research, and I was at Ohio State for that. And there I was exposed to a sports nutrition program at that level for the first time, and felt so strongly that if I had had those resources when I was an athlete, both in high school and in college, my experience would have been drastically different for the better. And I felt so strongly about that I completely changed my career path, and I haven't looked back since.
That is so awesome.
I know, I was going to say, that's really cool.
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of, we get two different main ways that people become athletic trainers, and I feel like most of the time it's either they were injured and that's how they came across athletic training, or they came across athletic training and were like, hey, like me, I was like, hey, I was a dancer, how come I didn't have this? I was jealous.
Yeah Nutrition is the same. It's usually like you had maybe an eating disorder experience, or you're just like, I love food so much and I want to talk about it all day long, but I don't want to be a chef, so what can I do here?
Right.
And, I think people forget overlook how important nutrition can be, and how much of a difference that you've noticed. Man, if you had that, I would have been another level.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, even if some of my coaches had just some of the information that hopefully we'll talk about today of how to talk to your athletes about food. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in gymnastics and cheerleading, so I'm sure you can imagine some of the comments that I got and teammates got. So that's a big reason why I do what I do.
That's awesome.
So we have another cryo breaker for you. What is your dietetics spirit animal? This is a modality, tool, maybe food, a guide, any tool of the trade that represents you as a dietitian.
Yeah, I mean, dietetics modalities are not super fun. It's like urine charts and blood work and questionnaires. But I guess maybe something that would be relatable to you guys too is, that cold sip of Gatorade you get when you come back in from the field and it's just like, oh, this is so refreshing. I like to think maybe I'm kind of like that. One, because I always show up with snacks, so people are excited to see me. And two, I mean, especially when I was with baseball, I know nothing about baseball, and the guys knew that. So they knew that I wasn't going to question them or get on them about everything that their coaches and strength coaches and everybody was talking to them about. I could just be a breath of fresh air for them.
I feel like when I think of like that cold sip that you're talking about, I feel like I think of, that's exactly what I needed right now.
Yeah.
I could totally picture that being you.
And it's always blue. I hope you pictured blue Gatorade in your head, because that's the best one after a long day.
Okay, yeah, that's valid. I'd say, especially on a hot day, I'd say so.
Yeah.
So at AT Corner, we like to pair evidence and experience. So can you kick it off with a story, experience, or even a case study about working with athletic trainers on managing the nutrition needs of athletes or patients?
Yes. I mean, just a really quick one. I don't know if this is a universal experience, but I have witnessed it at multiple teams now. At the beginning of the year, the head athletic trainer will give the "don't pee in the cold tub" lecture. And there's always that one athlete that's done it. That is one of my favorite 5 minutes of the year, because you just see everybody's head swivel to look at who has done it in the past. And athletic trainers are so good at kind of elbowing guys, but still being, professional and funny. So it's always fun to watch that.
So that's pretty bad when that has to be a part of your preseason meeting. That has had to happen very often.
Yeah. Have you guys had to have that talk?
No.
I've never had that.
Okay, I guess I just work with some real hooligans that, there's always that one story of that one kid that's like, what are you doing?
It's not a pool.
Yeah.
Not that you should pee in there
Exactly.
I've had a kid almost throw up in the whirlpool because it was so cold, and he was not vibing with it.
Yeah, I have unfortunately experienced a lot of throw up in the sports world too, but
Oof.
it's okay. I still love them.
Let's get started with the nitty gritty.
The meat and potatoes.
Right, exactly. So let's start with, what is the scope of a registered dietitian, and how does this, I think before we get started too, I feel like some people use nutritionist sometimes, or when they should be using dietitian, or sometimes they say dietitian when someone's not actually a registered dietitian. So can you explain also the difference between those, or like other nutrition professionals?
Yeah, it's confusing. First, I will say the credentials you want to look for are RD, which is registered dietitian, or sometimes you'll see RDN, which is registered dietitian nutritionist, or CSSD, which is an RD that has then specialized and taken a board certified sports dietetics exam. So that's who you're looking for. The main difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist is we spent a lot more money on school, probably. And legally, we are the only ones allowed to provide medical nutrition therapy or a specific meal plan. So, if we're talking about athletic trainers, I know a ton of very knowledgeable athletic trainers that I trust to give nutrition advice. And that's kind of where your scope falls, is you are totally allowed and encouraged to give that basic sports nutrition knowledge that you have. Usually there's a lot more of you guys than us. So we definitely want to take advantage of that knowledge that you have. But when it comes to something like diabetes or a GI condition, or getting down to the nitty gritty of providing a specific plan, or if there's allergies involved, or, we're maybe trying to cut stuff out. Like if your athlete is going to go vegan or vegetarian, you definitely want to work with a dietitian.
That's a really good differentiation, I want to say.
Yeah.
Whereas like we like to talk about how much athletic trainers should stay in their lane because we really enjoy it when other people stay in their lane. Like we hate it when coaches come over and they're like, oh, this person needs cupping or this. So I think that recognizing that we do have that basic nutrition knowledge, but also recognizing when we need to refer out. When do we need someone who has more knowledge than us?
Yeah, I
in
mean,
this?
I think the other lens that a dietitian will bring to the table, just kind of a little bit of a wider net. So, some things that we will keep in mind when talking to athletes is, does this athlete have the access and the finances to get the food that we are recommending? Am I seeing red flags for eating disorders? And then we take a bunch of classes on motivational interviewing and behavior change and ways to make the science and the literature actually applicable for the athlete to make change. And, I'm sure you guys would be great at that too, but you have a lot to do already. So, refer out to someone so that doesn't have to be on your plate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So is there a big push to help kind of regulate the practice of nutrition between dietitians and nutritionists? Because like here in California, ATs are very poorly regulated. We're the only state in the union that doesn't have anything like licensure or anything for athletic trainers, and we have a big push to like, hey, we need to correct that. Is that the same between dietitians and just someone calling themselves a nutritionist?
Yeah. I mean, athletic training and sports nutrition are so similar in so many ways. Like we also just made it so you have to have a master's degree to become a dietitian. And I'm sure, you guys have your feelings on that in your scope too. But every state is different. So right now I'm in Florida. Florida requires licensing to work in the state of Florida from Florida. So, if I was in Florida, but an athlete from Alabama, which is another state that requires licensing, wants to work with me, well, I'd have to go get licensure in Alabama to work with that athlete. And that is kind of a way to protect dietitians' scope of practice from those nutritionists that are doing some crazy stuff. I don't know if you guys saw in the news, there was a nutritionist that was recommending some really scary, hurtful advice to eating disorder people or people with eating disorders. And the state of Texas is suing her.
Wow.
So in some ways, we're good at protecting ourselves. And yeah, in a lot of states, in a lot of ways, we can do better because the internet is scary and there's a lot of people out there giving some really scary advice.
Thanks, TikTok.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. It's all the TikTok fads.
Hey, I'm on TikTok too, so you can find some good info out there.
Oh, definitely. So actually, speaking of social media, there's some. I know I've seen your Instagram, and you have some really good information on like concussions and nutrition with like immune nutrition, and I know that those are some things that we see as athletic trainers. Like we might see a lot of concussions or we might deal with hydration a lot. So how would you recommend dietitians to collaborate with ATs on those? And maybe what conditions specifically might we be looking for that, oh, hey, maybe I should call in a dietitian?
Yeah. I mean, a lot overlaps and it's always beneficial to have more eyes at the treatment table, so to speak. For concussions specifically, I would say something that you guys could definitely do and recommend. There's some really great research in DHA. So if your athlete is concussed, recommending a quality third-party tested supplement, so something like Nordic Naturals that has at least 500 milligrams of DHA in it. I would actually recommend more than 1,000. And some of the clinical trials coming out are as high as 2,000 milligrams of DHA.
Wow.
Keep in mind, that's like 10 plus pills that your athlete is going to be taking. So, use your best judgment on where you want to fall within that. Same thing with creatine. There's some really promising research on creatine coming out in concussions. Again, that dosage is pretty high in the literature. A lot of the literature is always also in rats because, we can't just give humans concussions. But some of the quality stuff is at a dosage of 20 grams per day, which is a normal loading dose, but a high dose to maintain every day. So I would say if your athlete is already taking creatine and they get a concussion, encourage them to continue, and then just watch out for any GI symptoms that happen. And then, the other way that your dietitian or a dietitian could help you with concussion management is one of the main symptoms is, nausea, complete loss of appetite, vomiting sometimes, right? So you can recommend that your athlete take 20 fish oil pills every day, but if they're not hungry and they're puking, that's definitely not going to happen. So one of the main ways we can be beneficial is some of that symptom management stuff, right? And then same thing with immune nutrition. So, there's certain supplements that your athletes are going to ask a lot about. I would say vitamin C is BS. There's really not a lot of support in the literature for vitamin C.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's actually really fascinating.
Yeah, so I would
I
say
feel like that's one of the biggest ones too.
Yeah, exactly. But if your athlete is taking a multivitamin or, they are eating fruits, which, we all know sometimes that's not happening. So if they want to take vitamin C, maybe encourage them to take a multivitamin instead of just throwing a big red no in their face, right? That could be beneficial. And then zinc is fine. If you take zinc within, like the first 24 hours of your cold symptoms, it might be a day shorter. That's kind of where the research is falling. But stay away from nasal zinc sprays because they've been associated with some loss of smell and stuff. So multivitamin
interesting.
for immunity, totally fine. Zinc, I'm okay with. But again, when you're feeling sick, the biggest thing we can do is symptom management. So how can we get food in that athlete? And that's where a dietitian can be very helpful.
Now, what about on the flip side? We kind of talked about that collaboration between, the dietitian giving, helping us out. But what about for the AT? Like, what can we do as athletic trainers to support your work as a dietitian?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways that this could look like. If you are an island of one and you don't have a dietitian available, which is the case for most of you guys, unfortunately, my biggest hope is that you're at least building a positive nutrition culture within that team. So, having a zero tolerance policy for making fun of, or, your athletes. Hopefully you're not making fun of your athletes, but your athletes making fun of each other's weight or commenting on food, things like that. Not talking about your own diet or the foods that you're cutting out of yourself, or maybe some of your own fear foods. Like if you don't like to eat sugar, well, athletes really need sugar in some sense. So, kind of keep some of that talk out of there. And then know resources that you can refer those athletes out to. So we talked about Instagram. There's a lot of great dietitians on TikTok. And then there's a lot of really good free resources through CPSDA, which is the Collegiate and Professional Sports Dietetics Association. And
Oh, cool.
the USOPC has a lot of great free handouts as well. If you are an athletic trainer and you have a consultant dietitian, so someone that's not there every day, please just help us stay in the loop, because you know how fast sports goes. And if you're not there, you're not, a lot of times not getting the information. So just, clue us in on who complained to you that their stomach was hurting, or who has really been trying to, change body composition, or who coaches are kind of getting on about stuff, or if an athlete is, tanking halfway through practice, give us a little nudge to take a look at them. And then if you're lucky enough to have a full-time dietitian available, again, keep us in the loop. And then I would say, please be a food service friend, because the full-time dietitians, usually on top of medical nutrition therapy and all that kind of stuff, are in charge of taking care of food service. Feedback is okay. We probably don't want it from you every single day. Please let the athletes eat first. Don't be that person that jumps to the front of the line at the end of the game. And, just don't complain about the food, especially in front of the athletes, because then the athletes are going to complain about the food, and it's like all you hear all day long. So,
right.
Be a food service friend. That would be wonderful.
And I'd have to say, like you said, that the stuff on USOPC is very in depth. It's really good stuff. I've pointed some athletes towards that direction, and they also have the Cooking with Team USA for like meal ideas and recipes.
Yeah.
Like, that's really cool how it's just free. Like, it's just out there.
And we've used some of those recipes too, like personally.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can find a ton of really great information. If you search Sports RD on Instagram, you'll find like 20 of us, more like 50 of us, that are regularly posting information and recipes and snacks and, all that kind of stuff. I think the difference and the benefit of having a dietitian in person in front of you, again, is that lens of what's affordable to you, what is a food that you already like that we can kind of build off of, watching out for red flags, and just making a little bit brainless for you, to be honest, right? Nutrition should be easy, and that's always my goal for athletes.
Also highly individualized. There's so much that you can get off of social media and off of your own research, but how to know what applies to you, that's a different story.
Yeah.
The person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, especially if you're trying to give yourself numbers, like you are trying to figure out your calorie goal or your protein goal, all of those are within ranges. And I have specific things I look for where I want to go within that range. Every athlete doesn't automatically need to be at the top of the protein range. And all of that is just math and equations, and there is some error to it. You have to have some feel of the nuance within all of those ranges. So it's helpful to ask a professional. It's like when you get your blood work back from the doctor and you're like, well, I'm at the, I guess I'm okay. I'm in the range, but shouldn't I always want to be at the top of the range? They have a little bit more knowledge on some of that than I do, right?
Everyone forgets about, everyone talks about the science, but there is an art to both professions.
Yes, exactly.
So we also see a lot of like injuries, and we're dealing with rehab. How does nutrition play a role in maybe like healing, or also as we're working through that rehab process?
Yeah, this is my bread and butter. I just started a private practice that focuses specifically on rehab athletes. And, I would say especially those first couple days after surgery, nutrition is really our only tool to prevent muscle loss, right? And the majority of muscle loss is going to happen within those first 5 to 6 days. So the more we can try to attenuate that, the better their total rehab process hopefully should look, right? I think also that's a time when a lot of athletes are very fearful of changes that might happen in their body. Whether it's gaining or losing weight, you really see it go both ways. And a lot of coaches are guilty of an athlete getting hurt and turning to them and saying, oh yeah, just cut your calories, skip dinner, don't eat carbs, that kind of stuff. And, I'm sure you guys can agree, some of our athletes can be quite dramatic. So they hear that and they want to take it to the extreme, and then they stop eating carbs and they're suddenly down to like 1,400 calories. Well, if you're not getting enough calories, you're not getting enough protein, you're not getting enough zinc, your timeline for your healing process slows down drastically. So nobody wants to be in rehab longer than they need to be, right? So having all of that in check is super important. And then, I'd also say it's a great chunk of time to work on your nutrition habits. If you have a 6-month, 9-month, 12-month rehab, and we are talking every other week during that process, you're going to come out of that ready to, can I swear on here? Like, ready to kick ass on the field, right? You're going to have your fueling strategy and all of your habits in place, and you're not even going to have to think about it anymore. And whether, athletes become interested in nutrition during that time because they're fearful or not, more athletes do become interested in nutrition during that time. So I'll take them, through the door, whatever way they come. So yeah, attenuating their fears and making sure that they have all the building blocks in place to heal is huge.
And I like how, maybe, fine tuning that nutrition stuff, especially going after surgeries, because that's something that they can control. Like, it seems like that early process, they can't control anything that's happening. They can probably barely bend their knee, so this is something that, hey, boom, I can affect this. I can do this.
Yeah. And you're bringing up a really good point, because that's a really great way to think about it. But again, a lot of our athletes can be extreme. And sometimes that's a time where they feel completely out of control, and nutrition is the only thing they can control. So then we see kind of a higher risk for, eating disorders or disordered eating in that sense too. So again, having a dietitian's eyes and ears on that athlete during that time is super helpful.
Actually, going along with those lines, what are some red flags that we might need to be looking out for?
Yeah. I think, not just for rehab, but in general, look out for signs of underfueling. So has your athlete lost their period, or are they constantly sick or not healing all the time, right? Are they constantly sore all the time? Is their hair thinning, or they're complaining that it won't grow? Are they nauseous in the morning or at practice? Well, that might be a red flag that they're skipping meals. Do they tank in the middle of a game? Are they moody, short-tempered, can't concentrate? And then I'll give you guys some numbers on underfueling. So the goal is to have a caloric intake of 45 calories per kilogram of lean body mass. So, and again, that's math that you might not have time for, but if you do have an athlete that you're worried about, and that maybe they're dieting and they're like, yeah, I'm eating 1,200 calories a day, you're like, well, that's definitely not 45 calories, right?
No.
Yeah.
We're shooting for at least 30 calories per kilogram of lean body mass. Usually you'll start to see bone problems at less than 20 and loss of period around 16. So those are some numbers to keep out for as far as underfueling. Also keep out for signs of poor body image. Are they scared of sugar? Are they constantly kind of looking in the mirror and pinching or kind of contorting their body, or making comments like, oh, I wish I looked like so-and-so? That can be a red flag that poor fueling habits are on the way. Signs of eating disorders: are they complaining about stomach issues like constipation or heartburn, or bloating? You can also look for Russell's sign, which is a callus on your knuckle, which indicates that they are purging, which is a big one. You would also see like bloodshot eyes with something like that. Obviously, do they disappear after meals, or are they skipping team meals? Or are they starting to show depressive or compulsive symptoms? That could be a red flag for an eating disorder as well.
So, say the AT identifies these red flags. We know they need to go see, a professional for this. Are we able to refer them straight to the registered dietitian, or in conjunction with like a physician, or do they need to see the physician first and then get a referral from the physician to see a dietitian? Like, which way, like, is there any preference? Or
Yeah. So first off, you never need a referral to go see a dietitian. In regards to eating disorders, first I would say you're free to talk to that athlete and express your concerns and see if they'll open up to you. And then you want to start to get your team together. So that should include yourself, a dietitian, and obviously your team physician, and make a game plan for that athlete. Normally, a big fear with an eating disorder athlete is they feel they are going to be automatically cut from the team or prevented from playing. And normally that doesn't have to be the case. And hopefully, prior to this instance, you already have a plan in place of where that line is, whether it be blood work, or if they're purging more than 4 times a day, or obviously if their body fat percentage is too low, right? But yeah, gather your team, and you definitely don't need to speak to the physician before you speak to the dietitian. But hopefully, all of you guys are speaking together, and it truly is a treatment team.
So for like seeing a dietitian, do they take insurances? Would they have to like pay cash out of pocket? I know like some schools probably will cover it, but like in general for just, maybe a regular individual patient, what's more common?
Yeah. In an eating disorder case, you can definitely find dietitians that will take insurance. I would say for general sports nutrition, off the top of my head, I don't know any that take insurance, but a lot of us are obviously aware of how expensive we can be. So again, you can find that free information online. A lot of us do like a question and answer. So I do a question and answer on my Instagram every Friday or Saturday. So if it's something simple, you can always pop into one of those. A lot of us will do groups. So again, if you're looking kind of for general information, that can be a more cost-effective way of doing it. Or,
Nice.
of course, we take clients one-on-one too. And I will say on my website, I have a little asterisk in there that says, obviously I got into this profession because I want to help people, right? I mean, I am in private practice, so I have to make money somehow. But if you truly feel like the cost is the only barrier and you are concerned, reach out to me. I'm not a monster. We'll figure out something that will work, right?
Nice. That's awesome.
There's the human aspect
Yep.
of it.
Yeah. I've had a bunch of athletes or athletic trainers just with a question, and I'll just shoot over some resources, or I'll be like, hey, I've got 30 minutes tomorrow. Let's just hop on a call, right?
Mhm.
Again, we're not monsters. We want to help people.
I love that you talked about how, athletes are usually they have a lot of identity with their sport.
Mm.
And so when a lot of times they don't want to seek help because they do fear that it's going to take them out. And I think something that I know that I try to stress, and probably a lot of athletic trainers listening to this too try to stress, is like, if we can figure out this early and get information early, then that is when we can have the best chance of supporting you, rather than that's when
Restrictions have to be made.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Again, the more eyes and ears you have on those athletes, the more likely you are to catch this stuff early. Again, with that positive nutrition environment, they're more likely to have a positive nutrition experience and be willing to talk to you, right? If you're the strength coach that's constantly saying, good morning, fatties, which has happened, I've seen it. If I'm concerned about my body image, I'm not going to go to the strength coach because I know he's going to tell me to stop eating, right?
Right.
So that's huge. That's huge.
I'm glad you brought that up. It just got me thinking because like I've seen like kind of similar behavior from like a coach, like maybe not like that blunt, but like they would be like they did frequent weighing. They did like I noticed on like road trips, like, oh, if one of them had like a cookie, he would take the cookie away, and just like certain behaviors like that. How do you approach another member of like the athletics team to address these kind of like poor behaviors towards food?
That's a great question, and something that I still think about frequently because there's no, perfect way to do it. As far as the weighing, fortunately, the culture of that is changing. Like University of Oregon just made it so that they can't weigh their athletes. And a lot of teams at least have it so that the athletes are not going to see those numbers and the coaches are not going to see those numbers. And if you do have a coach that's constantly coming up to you and saying, you know, what is this person's body comp? Don't give a number. Just be like, oh, it's moving in the direction we want to see it moving. We're making progress. It looks great, right? They don't need to see that. And then again, it's about knowing your audience. So if this is someone that you know is going to appreciate numbers, throw some numbers at them. That might help convince them. The other thing you can think about is there's this really great infographic that I can't think of the name of right now, but I can send it to you guys so we can post it. That it's like 60 different factors that affect your performance, and body composition is one of them, and weight is one of them. So why are we honing in so much on weight and body composition? Because there's so much else that could be going on. And that has been helpful. And, you know, sometimes it's slow. A lot of times it's slow to change, and you just got to try to lead by example and, you know, work your way up to where you're a decision maker and really make change there. But it's tough. It's really tough. Because, you know, it happens in men's sports too. And these things don't have an appearance, right? The majority of eating disorder patients are not underweight. And almost half of binge eating disorder is men. And obviously men also struggle with orthorexia as well, right? And orthorexia is like glamorized in our sports world because, you know, you want to see the athlete that's really working to put on muscle and clean eating, quote unquote, and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that can be hard to catch. And, you know, that's a big tsunami wave that you're standing on the beach just trying to be the one person fighting.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Actually, kind of along those lines, I get a lot of athletes who ask me about supplementation, especially when we're talking about like bulking and stuff. And I know that you said there were some resources that you mentioned earlier, but when someone asks you about supplementation, what is your go-to recommendation? Is it more like maybe you should be getting these more from food, or are there certain supplementations that maybe they can't get from food?
I think in my experience, supplements can be a really great way to draw a bridge to your athlete that's not interested in food. So I never want to be that big red stop sign like, nope, you can't take it, right? You know, if they want to come to you and take something, let's talk about why they want to take it and if that supplement is actually beneficial for them. And then on top of that, what are some things they can do with their food that we can work on together? And then as far as specific supplements go, number one, it has to be third-party tested. So USP, so that's like Nature Made that you would find in CVS or the grocery store, or NSF is that blue logo, or Informed Choice is that green check mark. You're looking for all of those labels on all of your supplements. And that includes energy drinks as well, which is a big struggle. Like Red Bull is I want to say the only one, or now they have C4 in cans too. Those are kind of the only ones that I trust, which is such a hard battle to fight.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Wow. I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, that's a hard battle to fight. Caffeine in general is tough. But anyways, back to supplements, I would say the main ones that work and that I would recommend often would be obviously whey protein. If the athlete is not already eating a ton of protein. Most of the guys that want to take whey protein are already getting enough protein. Creatine would be another one at 5 grams per day. make sure they are doing it consistently and ideally after practice with carbs and protein also. An omega-3 is awesome. It's beneficial for your muscle. It's beneficial for your heart. And we already talked about concussions. It's actually potentially not preventative, but if you are taking omega-3 prior to your concussion symptoms might be a little lessened, which is really awesome.
Ooh,
right?
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
And
That is really awesome.
yeah. And then a multivitamin, obviously, is great. Vitamin D can be something to look into, but I like to see blood work on that or have a doctor involved in that just because vitamin D is fat soluble. So everything else you'll pee out if you're taking too much. Vitamin D you'll store in your fat cells. And it's, unlikely that they're going to take a toxic level of vitamin D, but you just don't want to automatically tell people to take vitamin D and then not look further into it. Collagen
Absolutely.
potentially looks okay if their protein intake is already on par and they're having tendon and ligament issues. I would potentially recommend collagen 30 minutes prior to their most active part of their day with vitamin C.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. But the
That's good to
caffeine,
know.
no 17-year-old should need 500 milligrams of caffeine every day.
No.
Oh, no.
No.
Nope.
So overall, how would you recommend someone trying to find a dietitian, like an AT looking, for someone to collaborate with, or a patient athlete? Is there like a good like professional organization that has them, or is it just a quick Google search?
Yes, so there's a couple different places you can go. Obviously, I've already mentioned social media. Just search sports RD or sports dietitian. It's spelled DIETITIAN. I don't know why everybody gets that wrong. No big deal. CPSDA has a page on their website that has every full-time dietitian in sport listed. So you can look through every college, the dietitians we have in the military, who's in professional leagues, who's with the Olympic Committee, all of that kind of stuff, which is cool. And then if you are looking to work with someone one-on-one, you can go to eatright.org and you can search by specialty, and you can also search by insurance, which is a cool function.
Whoa.
And then if you go to healthprof.org or .com, sorry, you can search by location.
Oh, nice.
Nice. That's really cool.
Or again, just reach out to me, and I've got a pretty big network. I'll connect you with someone.
With all the states that you've been in.
Yeah, I've lost count at this point. I think it's 7. Lucky number 7.
That's awesome.
Hey, building the network.
Yeah. Hey, we
it.
all know if you're going to work in sports, usually you got to kind of move and follow the opportunity. And I have definitely done that.
Yeah, that is definitely how athletics likes to work sometimes.
Yes. And they never pay for your move, do they?
All right. Is it time for some action?
Are we ready?
I think so. Go ahead.
All right, so we have an action item for you. Overall, what do you want ATs to know about working with dietitians?
I mean, in addition to everything we just talked about for the last 30 minutes, right? Honestly, genuinely, I have never met an athletic trainer who wasn't supportive of nutrition, which is awesome because we are usually the new guys in town. Strength coaches have been around for a while. You guys have been around for a while. Normally it's us and like mental skills are trying to find our footing. So if you are supportive, that's a big shiny gold star. And kind of on that, there's always more of you than us. So look out for the red flags that we talked about. Feel free to give that general nutrition advice. And if we are with a team or with an athlete, I always ask my one-on-one clients who their physician is, who their athletic trainer or their strength coach is, and I keep them in the loop. So we know, even if it's just an email that's like, hey, I worked with Jimmy this week and we're working on building muscle, and he said he has a goal of this body comp and this weight. and his knee has been feeling great. Cool. Right? And then, sometimes they'll email back and be like, ooh, that's actually not his goal. So that's good to know, right? So keep us in the loop. We'll keep you in the loop. Be an advocate. That'd be wonderful.
Nice.
I think dietitians would be awesome to add to our healthcare team.
Oh my goodness, yes. It would be so great to have one in-house.
Yeah, usually we take some stuff off your plate too that you don't want to do, right? Like bringing the snacks and the constant bombardment of nutrition questions that you get every day. I had an athletic trainer one time who I was relatively new with the team, and he was like, Emily, I couldn't figure out why I was getting my notes done so fast in the afternoon. And I think it's because the guys don't come ask me for, nutrition advice anymore. Or more realistically, they don't come ask me what's for dinner. They go ask you. So
Look at that. That was a great advertisement. Once you said AT's finishing notes, I think everyone's signing up to make sure a dietitian is on staff now.
Oh, yeah. That athletic trainer loved me.
Oh, you know what? I actually do have a question about sports drinks.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've seen like Gatorade and Powerade and all those big names that have, I feel like, as we've heard, like a lot of sugar versus Pedialyte that's a little bit, has a different concentration of electrolytes. So we see the athletes who also will always have a Gatorade, just like with them when they're not like working out or on their off days or whatever. So for sports drinks and hydration and refueling and everything, what are your thoughts on those and like kind of a Gatorade versus like a Pedialyte? Or is it even worth it? Is there even a big difference?
So I don't know Pedialyte stats off the top of my head. I would say, especially if your practice is more than an hour long, or you are a heavy sweater, or let's say you're not good at eating everything you need throughout the day, or you're traveling, or you're at a higher altitude than normal, you should be having a Gatorade or a Powerade or something similar during your practice, and probably an hour after. Otherwise, yeah, I'd rather see milk, chocolate milk, water, coconut water is fine. And then when it comes to your sports beverages, I always want to see more sodium than potassium. So a lot of
good.
Yeah, because you're losing significantly more sodium in your sweat. So a lot of athletes like to go to something like coconut water, which has a ton of potassium, which is wonderful for the general population. But our athletes are not the general population. They're athletes, right? And their recommendations are always a little different. And that's a conversation that I'm having over and over again, right? I know you saw XYZ on this magazine. You are not that type of person. You're an athlete. So your numbers look a little bit different. So yes, always during practice, you want your sodium to be higher than your potassium. Good examples of that would be obviously Gatorade, Powerade. The Noon tablets are fine. I like Drip Drop, which is, I think it only has like 7 grams of sugar. So it's a little bit lower than something like Gatorade. It tastes so good. I have some of my heavy sweaters, I've even had add a Drip Drop to their Gatorade. And then if you have a very large, heavy sweater athlete and it's maybe the dead of summer, or practice is ramping up, like, the first month of football, right? Something like Right Stuff might be a really great option. Right Stuff has, again, numbers off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I would think, and I can fact check for you, Right Stuff has like 1,300 milligrams of sodium compared to a Gatorade, which would be more like 350. So Right Stuff is definitely a tool to have in your ATC bag. but not necessarily available for everybody.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised how many athletes need something like that. Like a lot of my female soccer players love a ride stuff.
Yeah, I feel like electrolytes and rehydration, that's a big.
Yeah.
We see that a lot.
A lot.
Okay. Maybe I'll put a shameless plug in here then. So it should hopefully be out right around when this episode drops. I'm currently putting together a giant cheat sheet for athletic trainers, and it will have
awesome.
all of this info and then some numbers for you guys, symptoms, and there are multiple pages on hydration, and the specific numbers, signs and symptoms to look for, things like that. So keep an eye out for that.
We will.
Yeah. I like that.
As soon as you said cheat sheet, we're sold.
Yeah, I know that you guys
in.
want it fast and dirty. So you just look at it and your answer is there.
So Emily, where can we find you?
My website is injuryrd.com, and on there you'll find, all the links to work with me. You'll also see some freebies on there. I have a link to a workbook that I have that is an athlete's guide from surgery to return to play after a tendon and ligament surgery. That is on Amazon as well. And then you'll see the cheat sheet that I was talking about drop on there. I'm on Instagram and TikTok as @injury_RD. And then email injuryrd@gmail.com.
Awesome. And I will make sure that all of that is in the show notes.
I think there's so much information in here that we can just eat up.
That was pretty good. I'm actually left speechless with that one.
I had to add some cheese.
There you go. And again, we have a lot of food references for a good thing we're doing this at the end of the episode. But no, I thought this was, like you said, there was a lot of information to eat and digest.
Ooh, there you go.
But in all honesty, yes, there was a lot of resources that, Emily gave us that are accessible to everybody. And you can, point your athletes towards those resources, or you yourself can, look at them and, get familiar with them. So I thought this was a very practical episode.
I think so too. There's so much you can take from it. Not only the free resources, but also where to find someone to talk to.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know it was that easy to find like a high quality, like a registered dietitian.
Right. I didn't know that either.
So yeah, no, I was really excited.
We're going to put some of those resources in our Facebook group. So if you are not yet a part of our Facebook group, go to facebook.com/group/ATcornerPodcast. It's free to join. Lots of free resources. Go ahead and jump on in there. It will be in the episode thread. If you're not listening to this live, just go to the search bar and search for this episode and it should pop up for you. We're going to put some of those, if Emily can find that infographic she was talking about, we're going to put that in there.
Oh my gosh, that'd be awesome.
I know, seriously, I think that would be so helpful when working with coaches.
And
especially.
I was going to say, and I'm sure a lot of ATs would love to have that to show their coaches.
Here you go, laminated right on your desk.
It will save a lot of stress and blood pressure raising and heart rates going higher.
Right. So you guys, if you guys are new, we do every other episode as education or stories. This one was an education episode. Next week, we're going back to our stories. Happy National Athletic Training Month.
Yes, we are in it. We are here.
Officially. So we are starting off next week with stories again from real athletic trainers. If you haven't listened to before, head over to our Instagram stories if you would like to submit a story or an experience that you've had on our next topic, which I have not picked yet. So we'll figure out what that is soon. Other than that, don't forget to share this with a friend. I think that this one especially has so much information that we can take into our clinics today.
Yeah, I think it's good professional and personal information
right.
for even yourself, your, dietary goals, performance goals. Hey, I think this can help all the way around.
Awesome. So you got anything else, Randy?
Nope, that was perfect. Thank you for helping us showcase athletic training behind the tape. Bye.